Welcome to Podtification, the show where three pastors sit around displaying their sharp wit and their occasionally sharp theology. We hope you enjoy. Now let's get on to the show.
All right, well, welcome back, Podtification, episode 2. We made it back for another round due to a huge, uproarious request for another episode of Podtification from our listener. Thank you for listening, by the way. We all know who you are. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom. Yeah, thanks, Mom. Do we know how many people actually? I didn't look to see how many views. Do we have more than just our mothers?
Yeah, we actually did pretty good. YouTube, okay. I think as of yesterday, we had like 121 views on YouTube, and we've had probably...
Sean was only 100 of those.
I was only 100 of those. So
and our mothers were the other 21. I guess.
Yeah. That's right.
So long as they made it to the ad read, that happens halfway in.
That's the important part.
When you guys prepare an ad read, no?
I'll recycle the one from last week.
Let's start this over. Hey guys, welcome. Thanks for those of you who haven't tuned out already. We're super happy to be back. I'm Jesse. I'm joined here by the other two pastors that I work with at Daybreak Community Church. Over here is Brent Devaney and Sean Stotine, and together we serve at Daybreak Community Church, and we get together fairly regularly and talk a lot about kind of the way God works in church community and the way that God works in individuals, and we really enjoy having those conversations. And we thought maybe you would enjoy having some of those conversations with us. So not due to a huge wave of requests, maybe a lot of unspoken requests, we decided to put this podcast together and share it with you. And so here it is, whether you like it or not. Podtification, episode 2. You can't stop us because posting on YouTube is free. So there you go.
Amen.
I thought we'd open this week like we did last week by just kind of giving you guys a chance, giving the three of us a chance to share kind of what's going on in our lives, what's big. We spend a lot of time, the three of us, talking about church stuff and what's going on in the life of the church. It's a lot of what we do, a lot of what we're passionate about. But interested in hear you guys, what's going on in your lives this week? What's big in your life this week? Sean, why don't you kick us off?
I can kick us off. So, I think probably the biggest thing in my life this week was the biggest thing probably for a whole lot of people. We had our first drive-in service this week, which was so exciting. I was, to be honest, a little bit skeptical about how all of that was going to work as we were leading up to it. First time we've ever done a drive-in service. First time we've kind of figured out, or tried to figure out how are we going to fit everybody into our parking lot? How are we going to make sure that people can get in to go to the bathroom? What are all those different kinds of logistics? I didn't have to think as much about that as Jesse and Brent did. And I'm thinking about how are we going to make the sound work? And, I was skeptical that people were even going to show up. And then on Sunday morning, as we're kind of getting everything ready, I start to see this line of cars moving into the parking lot. And it was this kind of field of dreams moment. And it was so encouraging and so uplifting and so much fun. Goodness, we had a good time on Sunday and the weather was beautiful. And actually looking forward to doing that again.
Yeah. Here. I thought that was really, Sean, is that your first time playing in like a not your first time playing outside, not your first time leading worship outside,
no.
But your first time doing church in front of cars?
Yes, yeah, first time doing church in front of cars. I love the movie Cars, and I always dreamed that I would be a part of that movie, but I didn't know it would come to reality. So.
I've always been a big fan of cars. I've always said that. I drive in cars all the time. I look at them. I give them gasoline, but never done church to them. So, what about you, Brent? That wasn't your first church outside?
It wasn't my first church outside, but I'd just like to point out that it was I thought it was a great success. Would you guys agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
And I asked that first because my second question is, can you just remind people whose idea, the drive-in church, whose idea that was?
Actually,
awkward
for the life of
silence.
me, I can't remember, honestly. You know, you're asking me, and I don't actually know where that came from. I read about one in South Carolina, I think, that was going on, Sean. I don't know if you heard about that.
I think I heard about that. Yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe one down in Mississippi or something.
Yeah.
Well, to be
yeah.
clear, it's been my idea all
Yeah,
along.
it was Brent's idea all along.
And
He came up with
let's
the
even
idea.
be more clear. How long ago have I been saying that we should do the drive-in church?
Oh, for months.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, actually,
No.
I think before the pandemic even hit, Brent's been trying to get people out of our church building for as long as I can remember.
That's actually kind of true. I wanted to, like, you know, the roof that sort of like, you know, like the football stadiums, the roof opens
Retractable
up
roofs.
on a
Yeah.
sunny Sunday. That would be awesome.
That's true. I remember Brent talking about wanting to be able to do that to our roof, like years before Jesse
And
even
that's a
got
true
here.
statement.
Like,
That's a true statement.
that's for real. Brent has always wanted to find a way to make things happen outside. I think it was actually ever since he went to the Philippines.
Yeah, they don't have walls. Yeah,
Yep.
so yeah.
The breeze just moves through, and Brent came back from the Philippines. He was like, I want to do that.
Well, I mean, we can only hope, I guess.
You can only do it 3 months out of the year in Vermont. But
yeah, well, no, because 2 of those must be too hot. So you can do it for maybe about a month.
Maybe.
But it was a really an enjoyable service. I really liked it a lot. I enjoyed just being up there, the occasional person like sitting up. But Sean, I saw your family for at least a while climbed up on top of their car and was watching from the roof, and that was pretty cool to see. A couple of their families were doing that, so it was a lot of fun. I think we're hoping to do that again, you know, weather permitting. We're hoping to do that again this coming Sunday, so looking forward to that again. It's good to get together again with people.
It is supposed to be beautiful.
Yeah. Nice. So Brent, what about you, man? What's going on in your life this week?
Well, I think you guys heard me offline mention this already, but we have 2 sick guinea pigs at our house. We have 4 guinea pigs. We started with 2, and unbeknownst to us, 2 of them were pregnant. So we have 4 guinea pigs now. So we got 4 guinea pigs for the price of 2. But one of them, I don't know how this happens, was born with ringworm. So that, you know, the whole physiology of how can you be born with ringworm, I have no idea. But that was transferred to one of my kids who now has ringworm. So we have, and then one of them is sneezing a lot, according to my wife and my daughter. So apparently respiratory infections are a big concern in guinea pigs. So we have a very costly veterinarian appointment in the morning. That's where we're at.
Let me ask first of all, just a no judgment question. Are guinea pigs considered vermin?
I don't even know.
It's an honest question. I don't know. Is that because I've heard like the term vermin?
Well, not in front of my children, but to my wife, I said, "We're really going to take rats to the vet and pay for that."
Tailless rats.
Yeah, that's sort of my term. I'm not sure if it's vermin or not.
There are places in South America that actually catch and eat guinea pigs. They are a delicacy.
I'll share that with my youngest daughter.
That sounds like a good idea.
Is this like, are you going to go farmed guinea pigs with these? Are these being raised to be a meal at some point?
Meat guiney pigs.
Don't
new
name
farming.
them. You can't name them.
Yeah, which reminds me, what are you guys
I volunteer not to eat the one with ringworm.
Well, I was just thinking, I would love to have you guys over for dinner sometime.
Yeah. Is there a so a little bit heartless, but is there a financial cutoff where you'd say, I'm not spending this on a guinea pig? Can you set a number?
Guinea pigs, I think it's got to be in the hundreds.
Yeah.
For my
triple
dogs,
digits.
For Ella, I would spend maybe more than I would on some other members of my family. I love my dogs. I would second mortgage my home for my dogs, but I can't see it happening for guinea pigs. So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. At some point on the podcast, we need to have a more in-depth pet conversation. So would you say, when you bring this up, something big going on in your life, which is a vet bill, is this like a source of, like, are you glad that so much of your life is consumed with guinea pigs right now, or do you wish that wasn't going on?
No, I wish it wasn't going on.
Wish it wasn't going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. In that case, I hope next week during our podcast you have something else to talk about for all of our sake.
Yeah, that's my life right now.
Yeah, well, I was sharing this with Sean a little bit, and I'm gonna stick with it. The big thing going on in my life right now is I've realized that at least right now I really like sunburns. Yeah, no, I understand, like, it's a weird thing to say, and I understand that there's like there's a lot of bad that comes from sunburn. Don't get me wrong. I don't have blinders on. I get it. And I've experienced like the blistering and the uncomfortable stuff and the peeling and everything. I get that. And not to mention, cancer and stuff. Like, I get that. But what I'm trying to say is that I think, especially at this point in time right now, I've had a couple like just really mild sunburns and I've loved it. Just like that feeling of like being out in the sun and it's starting to get like hot on your skin, you start to sweat and stuff, and you just feel like that heat coming down on your skin, and then you go inside and it like feels cold, and you feel like, you get really tired after being outside in the sun for a couple hours, and you come inside and you just get tired.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just me? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. No, I follow you.
Probably dehydrated, some kind of health issue, but I kind of like that. Like I enjoy that feeling, and then like going out in the evening after having just a little bit of a sunburn and feeling like that's cold on your skin, So I've been like the big thing in my life that I've been loving for the last week is like getting a little bit of a sunburn and just feeling that. Like, it's just a little bit of discomfort, but I like it.
Well, to put on my nurse hat, I'm being serious here. The incidence of melanoma is higher in Vermont than other states, even sunny states. And one of the theories for why it's like that is we get so little sun that people overexpose themselves to the sun whenever we do have it. And so sunburns is one of the biggest risk factors for melanoma. And
so thanks, man. Thank you. You drink Diet Coke all the time. I do make fun of you for that.
Just saying.
Thanks. So this has been Brent ruining people's days. So if you have guinea pigs, they're terrible. And if you enjoy being outside, you heard it here. Don't.
Yeah. So it's our new segment.
It's our new segment. Everything's terrible. Everything you love is terrible. Thanks, Brent. So I'm glad, it's funny. I'll go ahead and say this now. This is the first time in our 2 episodes that Brent's actually been online to hear me talk during this segment, because his internet has been cutting out when we've been trying to do this. And so I've been really enjoying this segment because it's just been me and Sean. But next week we probably won't do it because I don't want Brent to ruin things that I've been enjoying in life.
Well, we tried this at my house and it didn't work last time we tried it. How long did you 2 talk before you realized I wasn't coming back, that my internet was down?
Well, we kept talking while you were disappeared because we figured you were coming back. So it wasn't until you texted me. So we probably chatted for a good, 5 minutes, and it was wonderful.
We missed you, Brent.
I'm here to stay. I'm here to stay tonight.
Yeah.
We cut things off when we realized you weren't coming back. It wouldn't have been the same without you.
Right. Yeah. It's a problem trying to set people's experience too good, knowing that the next week you would be back, and it would lower the bar again. You don't want to do that to folks. I'm sorry. Our conversations, I feel like, oftentimes start off meaning like more meaner than they actually end. So I guess it's good to get all the shots off at each other now.
That's right. You start with a low bar, so anywhere you can go is up.
Yeah. So we'll be nicer as things go on, I hope. So thank you. It is good, actually. I do enjoy just visiting with you guys about stuff that, isn't overtly. We all 3 care deeply about spiritual matters and about theology and about kind of the way churches function, the way church life functions. So our conversations oftentimes kind of revolve back into that. But it is also fun just to sit and kind of shoot the breeze with you guys and kind of talk about some stuff. And with that in mind, I want to bring back something we started last week, which is just having strong opinions about meaningless topics. And sometimes I think the most fun, strong opinions are about meaningless topics. And I wanted to hear your guys, and it's actually, I'm strangely intrigued about your answer to this question because I genuinely don't know how either of you guys are going to approach this. So my question to both of you is, if you had to pick one fast food place that's the only one you could go to for the rest of your life, which one would you pick, and give me a reason?
Does that have to be a franchise?
No, but it does have to be fast food.
It doesn't, or
It does. It has to be fast food.
That is a tough one. One for the rest of your life.
That's the only one you could do. Be careful, Sean, because your answer probably will give you cancer.
Probably. That's true. That's true.
Is pizza fast food?
It depends on which one you pick, I think, Brent.
Yeah.
They do have like those little pizza joints in airports, so like Pizza Hut and stuff like that, where you can just kind of grab a slice and go. So I'd say that probably qualifies as fast food.
So it'd be like a grab a slice place. So that
probably.
So neither of you, what I'm picking up from you, neither of you guys have a place that's like favorite, like it would be here for sure.
I mean, I've got favorites, but I like variety, and so that's what I'm concerned about. It's like
maybe you should push the rules a little bit and do one of those hybrids. Sometimes they have like the KFC, Taco Bell in one.
Oh yeah. I'll do that. I'll do the KFC Taco Bell. That gives me some room there.
Really?
I love the I'm doing that. That sounds wonderful because there are some for the rest of my life. I can sometimes have fried chicken and I can sometimes have tacos. I mean,
there you go.
That's a way better solution. I was originally going to say, like, if I had to narrow it down, I'd probably either choose In-N-Out Burger because their burgers are really good, or Chick-fil-A because their chicken sandwiches are really good. But I'd get tired of those if I couldn't have alternatives.
Plus, those aren't in Vermont, so you'd just never have any of them.
And so I'd just starve to death. It's a problem I didn't consider.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah. So thank you, Jesse, for giving me an alternative. That was a much better solution.
It's what I'm here for.
This is why you're our pastor.
That's right. Yeah. Not just a pretty face, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. Solving dilemmas.
When have you gone to In-N-Out Burger?
Don't dodge the question, Brent.
No. I didn't. You've been to In-N-Out Burger like more than once in your life?
Yeah. I've been to In-N-Out a few times. First time was when I was in California delivering Robbie Pitt's van to him.
Oh,
that was the very first time. Robbie Pitt was the founding pastor of Daybreak, and I took a road trip to bring his van and his dog to him, and I ate In-N-Out Burger, and it was really, really good. And I've had it a few times. Got a milkshake? Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Milkshakes.
Yep, that's the way to go. And I've had them a few more times in Arizona, and I'm a fan of In-N-Out, but it doesn't happen very often. So
yeah, no, that is a good one. I ate that one in San Diego last year.
In-N-Out, like I have a little bit of a bone to pick with In-N-Out. It's not really like logical, but they have their whole like it has nothing to do with their food. They have the whole hidden menu thing. Where you go there and they have like the menu printed up on the board, but if you happen to speak the lingo, if you happen to be able to say like certain things, you can order things that aren't really represented on the menu.
Like a 4x4 monster style or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you happen to like know somebody or know like the thing to say, you can get stuff that's not even really printed there. And I don't actually really like that.
You feel it's a little elitist?
Yeah. Elitist, like I don't know, sneaky. I don't know. I don't like it. I want to have like egalitarian fast food. Everybody can pick from the same menu. We're all coming to the same. We're all going to share the same E. coli bacteria. We might as well be able to order from the same menu. We all have the same money. Come on.
Okay, that sounds like a political statement, but egalitarian fast food. I haven't thought about that.
Remember, strong opinions on meaningless topics, Brent.
Yeah. I mean, it sounded like a political statement. I'd never thought about it.
I'll stand behind it. I mean, if somebody wants to debate me, it's fine. But actually,
well, let me just
I
point
feel the
out:
same about it.
aren't they Christian brothers and sisters? Isn't it like a Christian?
That doesn't mean they are right about everything.
Well, I think it means you need to give them a little love.
You're my brother, and you're not right about most things.
But I didn't say they're right, but I mean, you just like publicly were talking bad about your fellow brothers there. But anyway, but isn't that true? Aren't they like a so I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
They often have like Bible verses printed on the bottom of some of their cups and stuff like that. Yep. Yeah.
It is true.
Brent, what's your choice? What's your?
I would do Ward's Hamburgers in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. It was a fast food place that I grew up as a little kid.
Warts with a Z?
Wards with a D.
Oh, wards. Okay.
Wards.
That's way better than warts.
Yes.
Wards.
Yeah.
Wards. WARDS. And so every time I travel through Hattiesburg, Mississippi, I guess probably like analogous to what's the place in Williston on Williston Road? Al's French Fry. Yeah, so it's sort of analogous to the Al's French Fries kind of place. It's not a franchise, but it's really good.
It's the nostalgia factor, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Hot take. I do not, and I'm sorry if they're Christian brothers and sisters. I do not like Al's French fries.
Really?
Overrated. I don't like them. I don't like them.
They're hamburgers or they're French fries or everything?
I haven't had anything there other than a creamy that I thought was good, and the creamy was just like anywhere else.
I'd have to disagree. I like their burgers. Their fries.
It's like you take like I don't want to get. I mean, it's like just taking it's like a hockey puck. Yeah. It's like White Castle. You ever heard of White Castle?
Yep.
Yeah, it's like that.
I'd have to.
I don't like. I would much rather go to Five Guys than Al's for sure.
So with that being said, I don't think you would like Ward's Hamburgers.
It doesn't sound like it, but that's okay. I'm glad you do.
Yeah.
And this, I'm not interested in judging your decision. Ward's Hamburgers in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. If I'm ever there, I will go there just because of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine, 100%. It's a close shave between Subway and Panda Express for me, but Panda Express edges it out. Like I love Chinese food, and so Panda Express would win every time.
And that kind of covers that variety base too, because Panda Express has quite a large menu. Yeah. It's like the buffet style kind of thing where you can kind of go down the line and try a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, well, a large variety of things that can stay heated for a long time, because that's the
perfect.
They like put out like 10 items and they're all sitting there the whole day, right?
Right. You mean kind of like your favorite Golden Corral?
But see, there's more of the difference here. Let me explain the difference. The difference is
real quick, we can just move on.
No. Let me explain the difference. The Chinese place, there's not a large volume of people that come to it. It's like at a mall usually, right? Isn't it at a mall?
No, they've got standalone places. They've got their own brick and mortars.
Okay, but mostly they're at a mall. Is that right? Is that fair?
I don't honestly. I've never been to one in a mall. They probably are.
The ones I've seen have been at the mall, and so there's not a large volume of customers that come.
Let's just say they're only in a mall, and no one goes to them. Just for the sake of my argument. Let me define this very closely.
And so that whatever dish, what's your favorite dish there, for example?
All of them.
Pick one. Give me a name.
I don't know, fried rice.
So that fried rice has been there since 9 o'clock that morning. If you're there at 3 in the afternoon, possibly. Golden Corral, they are so awesome that they have a large volume of people that constantly come in. And so if you have fried rice, for example, on the buffet at Golden Corral, there's no way it's been out there longer than 40 minutes because of the volume of people that are coming through. And so you have a fresh supply of every item pretty much. And so that's the difference. So,
okay.
All right.
So what you're saying is that I would probably get COVID at Golden Corral.
Because of the volume of people.
Because of the volume of people that are there. All right, noted. Thank you, Brent.
Actually, that's a good argument. That's why it hasn't opened yet. So
yeah.
And I think Panda Express is open now.
I don't know. There aren't any in Vermont.
Okay.
I also, Sean, would starve. All right. Well, so far we're 2 for 2 of Brent being a curmudgeon about everything. So well done, Brent. Let's see if we can move on. Thoughts about, this is actually a question, Brent, that you posed to me, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts. I'll quote, thoughts on breakfast for dinner. Oh, no, this is not. I reworded this, so I won't quote you. I'm sorry. For the first thing is, do you guys have breakfast food during other times of the day?
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So breakfast for dinner, you guys do that occasionally? You have breakfast food and you have it for dinner?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you do that, what would you do? Like bacon, eggs, whatever?
Sometimes
Pancakes?
pancakes, sometimes like waffles or French toast, something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah. You do that, Brent?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I'm never been a really big fan of that. I get it. I've never, for whatever reason, breakfast food for dinner for me is not satisfying. I really like breakfast. Don't get me wrong. Like I enjoy almost all breakfast foods, like traditional breakfast foods. I like them all, but like breakfast for dinner for me, like right from the get-go, and I can't really understand why. Like I can't really like explain to you why, but just like a gut reaction, I'm not interested. Like it's not attractive to me. If Zoe said, oh hey, I made us like breakfast for dinner and pancakes and eggs and bacon, like I wouldn't say anything, but I wouldn't be excited about it, right? Like it wouldn't spark my fancy. Okay. But I'm not interested in debating that. It's okay if I'm happy being wrong. That's just the way I feel. How would you feel about dinner foods for breakfast? That's my question to you.
How do I feel about them?
Yeah, like if somebody, if you woke up and somebody had made like a meatloaf
for breakfast?
Yeah.
It'd be a little weird. Yeah. No, I don't think I'd be terribly interested in that.
That's actually a good insight. You don't ever see that. You rarely see that happening.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that. I mean,
I'm pretty sure that I'm surrounded by a world of hypocrites. And I just want to know.
What do you mean by that?
Well,
because we like breakfast for dinner.
Right.
But we're not keen on dinner for breakfast.
But I don't want to make it that way. Sorry, Brent. I know you're getting ready to pick a fight. I'm not trying to pick a fight. Would you feel the same way? Like if there was like a classic dinner dish, like lasagna or something, and somebody like say, "Hey, I made you this," and it's 8 a.m, and there it is. Would that be interesting to you, or it sounds pretty heavy to me? It doesn't sound enjoyable to me. I don't know.
Well, that's a complicated answer for me. Because I don't eat breakfast, and the reason I don't this sounds weird. The reason I don't eat breakfast is because if I eat,
I had it for dinner.
Exactly. But if I eat breakfast, then I actually am hungry all day long. So I literally don't ever eat breakfast. I don't eat until lunch, and it makes me tired for whatever reason. But I do think if I did eat breakfast, I'd be open to eating something that I would eat at dinner. I think I would.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it would be weird, but I think I could.
I mean, I could imagine, there's things there's like some magical foods that I think are appropriate basically anytime.
Like pizza.
Well, like pizza is totally one.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, totally. I'd eat pizza for breakfast. I have,
I'm pretty sure, and maybe I'm getting ready to pick a fight with our listener. I'm pretty sure that that's a man thing.
Pizza for dinner or pizza for breakfast.
Yeah.
Goodness, I don't even know anymore. I'm just hungry now.
I'm out. Oh no, I can't stand up. No, but I'm serious. Zoe, who is in all ways fantastic, but not interested in pizza for breakfast. Like, and when I do that, because I do, she is shocked.
Yeah, she hasn't lived.
That's yeah. I think have you done that in your adulthood? I'm just trying to remember. I haven't eaten pizza for breakfast as an adult. I used to
Oh,
do
yeah.
that when I was in college.
100%.
Yeah,
Really?
I'll partake. I'll if there's pizza sitting there, and sometimes I wake up and I'm just like, oh, hey, slice of cold pizza.
Cold
Like-
pizza. Exactly. Now that's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about, Sean.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Cold pizza, not appropriate for dinner, 100% appropriate for breakfast.
Absolutely.
But isn't that weird? I think that was my experience too. When I did eat pizza for breakfast, you don't warm it up.
No. Why? Because you don't eat dinner foods for breakfast.
Exactly. We circle back around to your point. Actually.
Right. Yeah.
Jesse is vindicated.
But I do. I'd be really interested if you're listening to this podcast and you have 2 X chromosomes, you're female, and you eat pizza for breakfast. Please leave a comment and let us know, because I have yet, and maybe one of your 2 wives or the women in your family do. I have yet to meet a woman who likes pizza for breakfast. I haven't yet, and so if anybody here is listening or watching and does, let us know. I'd be really interested. I actually really be interested in hearing that. At some point, we should have a toppings debate, but I don't know if I can handle Brent hating on my toppings that I pick. So I think we'll.
I did. Yeah, I agree. Because I went to your house one time and that was messed up. The toppings.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
I went to your house one time and I recall that my idea of a topping on a pizza was much different than your idea.
Yeah, well, I think it is kind of an age-old truism that you get 5 people in a room, there'll be 6 different topping orders. So yeah, we'll have that discussion at some other point. Let's move along. Sean, I feel exceptionally close to you right now that we share our cold pizza for breakfast. Let's change gears. Unless you guys have any other meaningless topics you want to discuss.
No, I think it's a good time, unless it's non-food related, because I really am hungry after that. But
I was gonna go for something else, but we'll move along. I'd like to talk about an article with you guys that I was reading this week. Let me see if I can pull it up here. It's an article about the role of the church, particularly in kind of culture today. Let me see if I can pull it up here. I'll read some of the title here is Pastors Must Speak Pagan More in Coronavirus Era of Online Outreach. This is by Michael Gerbosky, and he's writing for the Christian Post. And I'll read a couple little segments about his article, and then I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts about this. So let me read again. We'll post a link to this article in case you want to read it for yourself. We won't read the whole thing here, but if you want to read it, we'll post a link and you can check it out. But we'll discuss this article here. He writes this: as part of their online worship services during COVID-19 shutdowns, churches need to speak pagan more in order to better reach the mainstream culture, says a ministry expert. During a Zoom webinar that was held last Friday, Joshua Lagston of the Billy Graham Center at Wheaton College spoke about this. He says that congregations need to recognize that social media, especially in a time when so many churches have been online-only worship, is a platform to engage people far from Jesus. We have to shift from being monolingual, only able to speak Christianese, to being bilingual, able to talk Gentile, he said. We do a good job speaking Christianese. We do a great job speaking to the church, but can we speak pagan? That's the question. We'll move on, but I'm interested in your guys' thoughts right off the bat. What's your take on this right from the beginning, from these couple quotes here?
Brent?
Well, I like Wheaton College, and I like Billy Graham, so I would say that's first.
It's really just standing on a pretty firm foundation there, Brent. You've not venturing out into the deep water yet.
I guess, and I read that article. I guess I need more examples of what he's talking about, and several to interestingly, I learned this actually today, but because I'm going to teach on First John chapter 4 tomorrow in one of our iConnect groups. But and I just didn't know this. There's two actually different Greek words in the Bible for testing something. And so it says to test the spirits of prophets. In other words, when someone's doing Christian teachings, we're to test them. And there's two Greek words for test. One is to test it with the idea of debunking it. And there's another Greek word to test it with the idea and the hopes of giving it approval. And John, interestingly, said when you listen to a preacher, he said, test it with the hopes of you're going to be able to approve it. And so with that sentiment in mind, to kind of give this guy the benefit of the doubt, there is scripture that says, that Paul says, I become all things to all men so that some might be saved. He changed his methods, but not his message. And then there's the Old Testament passage, and there's a book written about this called the Issachar factor. It was talking about the sons of Issachar knew the times and knew how to handle the culture of the day, if you will. And the premise of the book is that we as Christian leaders should have the Issachar factor. We should be able to read our culture and sort of engage it in the appropriate kind of way. So there is that benefit of it. But then you look at it from the other perspective and you say, well, the Bible says that we're to be in the world, but not of the world. And we're to be distinctly different. And so how much do you want to speak the same language, but still be different at the same time? So I don't know. I just didn't answer the question except to say I can see both sides of the equation there.
Well, I think anytime we work on answering a question, oftentimes we have to kind of wander around it a little bit and kind of explore it. So I think that's fine. Sean, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I read the article as well, and it actually reminded me of another article that I read probably about 2 years ago on the Gospel Coalition, and it was written by Trevin Wax. And I went back to look it up just to kind of see where the similarities were and the differences. And the write-up was actually about how Andy Stanley and Tim Keller, both from very different churches with very different theological approaches and theological perspectives in very different regions of the country, engage in this similar practice of addressing both believers and non-believers, the churched and the unchurched, the Christian and the non-Christian, however you want to delineate those things when they're preaching. They will intentionally address both because they recognize that at any given moment within the church, there are people who are sitting there who don't know Jesus. And so there needs to be circumstances where, as you're teaching and preaching the word, that you can engage both of those subsets. And so they'll intentionally use language to capture one segment and then a different kind of language to capture the other segment and bring them together for the purposes of conveying the truth of the word and for kind of creating a sense of unity among the body, which I thought was really interesting because when I read this article, I got this similar impression. And that's kind of where they were going with that, is the audience has expanded significantly now that everything is online. We don't necessarily know all the time who's watching, and we don't know the state of every soul that is participating in church services these days. And so trying to be cognizant of that and engaging with those different subsets in a way that is going to hopefully capture their attention and bring them back and leave them, desiring more. I think there's some validity to that. I think there's something there that I appreciated. I think the idea of using the term pagan is a little bit divisive, and definitely sounds like it's condescending, which I wouldn't agree with their use of language, but I think I appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah.
I think you picked up on something that just kind of, it did kind of rub me a little bit the wrong way. some of the tone and some of this article, and I think I think oftentimes the way Christians talk about this topic, it is kind of this us and them. Oh, Ollie's visiting me. Hi, buddy.
Hey, Ollie.
Yeah, I'll be done soon. I gotta be done soon, guys. I'm sorry. um, it does kind of set up this us and them, Christian to pagan or Christian to Gentile kind of a dichotomy. Learn to speak two languages. I think there's a difference there. But I do think that when we talk about it the way that he did here, it sets up such a big kind of, I don't know, emotional divide that I'm not really even sure is there. Can we learn to speak pagan? I think really what he's just trying to say is, can we learn to communicate truths that matter to everybody in a way that everybody can understand? The simple thing is that the same truth that needs to be shared with the believer needs to be shared with an unbeliever. You just have to make sure that you're doing it in a way that both people can understand, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I wonder if there needs to be some consideration given to who their anticipated audience is for this article, because there's probably a difference between, like, we're a church in Vermont. We know that the church isn't on every street corner here in Vermont. We know that most of the people we're going to run into probably haven't been to church in years, if ever. As opposed to church down in Mississippi, right, where there are people who have grown up going to church. They still might not necessarily know Jesus, but they've grown up going to church. And so, church in that context is probably very used to speaking Christianese, because everybody knows that language down there. And so perhaps they're kind of addressing a church in that kind of perspective to say, hey, your reach is now moved beyond that realm, to be aware of that. And whereas for a church like us, we're already a little bit more aware of that. And that's not meant to be disparaging to any church. It's just we're beginning to realize that our context has grown and shifted significantly now that everything's online.
Yeah, I mean, he does presuppose that there's a lot of unbelievers listening to their sermon or their church service, which, I don't know how you gauge that. I mean, that's great. I hope that's true. As we've learned, thankfully, we have a lot more people listening to our church service than the normal 150, 175 people that are at the service. We've, at least views, we get more views, hundreds of views. And so how many of those people that are watching are believers versus unbelievers? I don't know how you gauge that. There's like a red flag that comes up beside their name or something.
It's almost like oh, I'm sorry, Brenda, I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No, I was done.
I think I was trying to figure out where this disconnect comes for me. The idea that all of us heard the truth at some point as an unbeliever and became believers, right? There was a moment for all Christians where the gospel eventually worked its way into an unbelieving heart, and that believer accepted that truth. There was a moment where we all heard the gospel in that way, right? Obviously, we all heard it many of us heard it in a different way, but we all heard it in a way that spoke to an unbelieving heart.
Right.
What's interesting to me is that we come from that place, from that moment of hearing the truth of the gospel communicated to a Gentile. We won't say pagan, we'll say Gentile unbeliever. The truth of the gospel that spoke to us that way. But then somehow we kind of wander away from that, or never are able to communicate that to other people. The fact is, we've all heard it this way, right? It's not like it's a mystery to us. It's not like we've never heard the gospel shared to unbelievers before. We all have. But the idea that somehow maybe once we become a little bit insulated in the Christian community, and we only speak about faith with people who have already experienced and practiced faith, then we kind of lose the language that bridges that divide, right? If you only talk about spirituality or your relationship with Jesus with other people who are already on that walk with you, then your vocabulary moves in that direction, and you might start to lose the vocabulary that bridges the gap.
Right.
And I think maybe that's kind of what we're talking about here. I mean, it's not like we didn't ever speak that language, but maybe we haven't practiced it. Maybe we haven't been intentional about it. I mean, it is kind of a faux pas to speak about your faith around other non-believers, right? It's a little bit of a kind of a socially unacceptable thing, or at least uncomfortable thing. And so it seems like it's pretty rare for people to have that opportunity. So I wonder if maybe that's kind of where this is going here.
I think that's a good possibility, certainly. I mean, either way, it's something that's good for us to be considering and thinking about in our own lives as we go, not just in church on Sunday morning, but wherever we happen to go, in our own lives individually, thinking about, okay, how do I have the opportunity to be speaking the truth of God's word in a way that is understandable and relatable to people around me? How do I keep myself from kind of compartmentalizing my Christian faith in one place and allowing it to kind of permeate everything that we're doing?
So here, let me move on to a point he makes here. He says, Laxton also says a good way to be bilingual in this way, his words, bilingual, is, as he was explaining it, was for preachers to use movies, TV shows, songs, and personal stories to illustrate a point. Don't try to impress. Oh, let's stop there for a moment. Is that appropriate? Is that useful? Using movies, TV shows, songs, personal stories to illustrate a point. Do you think that does accomplish bridging that gap in some degree?
I think it can be useful, but you got to be very careful that you aren't pandering.
Explain that a little bit more.
Yeah. Like trying to shoehorn a movie into, or a song or something like that into your sermon, it would come across pandering. It's like, it doesn't really fit. It's not really serving the end goal of the message. It's just like, I'm going to throw something in there so that I look hip and cool.
Yeah. Like
and
a millennial trying to get a TikTok account right now.
That's right. Yeah. I don't have one. I don't. I have not
Stay
done
strong.
the TikTok thing. But yeah, like you don't want to.
He is on TikTok, ladies. Was it Trumpet Talk? Is it Trumpet Talk? Trumpet Talker?
No, Trumpet Kid. But Trumpet Kid. No, I am not on TikTok. But coming soon to a TikTok near you.
Trumpet Talk, TOK, look it up. I'm sorry, but yeah, okay. To your point, trying to shoehorn like pop culture in, just for its own sake, just for the sake of using something that's recognizable.
Right.
Yeah.
But there was years ago, I did a summer series, Bible study series for young adults and college students, where we actually looked at faith in movies, and that was actually very, very fun and interesting. We would pick different movies, and we would look for those faith themes, and we'd start to discuss them in the context of the film. And so that was an intentional, like, we're gonna look and see what we can see in this, and is there a larger story that the filmmaker or the writer is addressing here that God also addresses, and places where there's similarities, places where there's divergences, and in those places where there are divergences, how does God answer those questions? But that's a different kind of scenario, which is why I think there are circumstances where you can use pop culture in a sermon effectively. You just have to be careful.
Yeah, agreed. You got anything to add, Brent? You still awake?
I was just thinking pop culture, though, you have to be careful with. I mean, there's certain aspects of pop culture that I don't want to endorse implicitly by talking about. You know what I mean? Like some of the, I can't think of an immediate example, but sometimes certain movies or songs, are not songs that I would want. You implicitly endorse them by mentioning them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some reality TV that I personally don't want to watch, and I don't want my children to watch. And so if I'm using those examples but not qualifying that, I think there's something distinctly should be different about a Christian and what they watch and listen to. And so that would be my only concern.
Yeah, almost gives license.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he moves on to say, don't try to impress your audience with $5 words that they have to ask for you to define, which immediately makes me wonder, Sean, Brent, you guys have both preached, at Daybreak, I imagine other places. What are some of your favorite $5 words that you use to confuse a congregation when you don't know what else to say?
Propitiation.
Yeah, propitiation and transubstantiation.
Transubstantiation.
Yeah. No, I. This is the part where of the article where I started to resonate with them a little bit.
Me too.
I will use some of those big theological words and immediately define them. Immediately define them.
Right.
I'll use them because I think there is some rich heritage there that we don't want to lose in the kind of exploration of theology, but I'll define them because I don't ever want to assume that people just know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I say some things. I think that's a good point. Immediately define is a good idea. Like justification, I say God makes me just as if I've never sinned.
I've used that many times because of your use of that, Brent. That is
I've always
helpful.
said
that. Jesse's always said that, but I know it because of Brent.
But yeah, I agree. I resonate with him in that article in that sense of Christianese, those kind of terms, not defining them. And I guess it depends a little bit on your audience, because you can't qualify everything you say. And you can't say, sometimes you might mention David and Goliath, for example. And, that's a bad example because even most non-Christians understand that story. But I think what he's saying is you got to be careful if you're talking about other stories in the Bible that no one even understands as you're using that as an illustration. So I think that's actually a good point. You have to be mindful of those things. What if there's people who don't have a biblical knowledge base? You be careful in the examples that you use.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing, I mean, I would agree with you. I think there are words in kind of the Christian vocabulary, just as there are in any subject, that have a specific meaning and are really useful for a very specific purpose, right? And because they're kind of specific, they don't get used in conversation usually. So if you do use them in context, it's probably worth defining things like propitiation. I know nobody uses that ever, so I think that's a really important point. And I think something that oftentimes pastors or speakers in general can create, and unintentionally, a division between themselves and the people listening by using words that they might know what it meant, but people like kind of a mental hiccup for people, and they say, "Oh, where is he going with that?"
Yes.
This topic has, for me, ballooned into kind of a larger kind of just thought process in my mind, though, which kind of made me wonder about, what is it as a church we are meant to offer, and not just Daybreak, but church in general. Like, what are we supposed to be bringing to the table? What are we presenting to people? What is kind of our calling as ministers of the gospel, as people who preach the gospel? What is our calling to share? the thing that was kind of echoing through my mind as I was reading this was that notion, first, I think Peter talks about in First Peter, Hebrews talks about moving past the simple things and moving into more maturity. And I feel very strongly about our role as just a church of trying to move all of us into more and more spiritual maturity. And that being kind of part of a Sunday morning's prerogative. That's one of the things we're there for, is to sharpen saints, right?
Right.
And so you have to find a way to do that, as well as speaking to seekers, I think. But I think it is a really interesting point, to think what are we trying to do on a Sunday morning, and what is our role? And I guess it's probably different for different churches, right?
Yeah, I think it is different for different churches. I think, Robbie, our founding pastor, used to say every church has their own fingerprint, and, on purpose. And I think every church has their own personality and calling, and they might arrange their church services in a way where one service is more seeker oriented for people to invite non-believers to, and their, versus another part of their service. And so, I think it's just sort of church dependent kind of thing. I think, to Sean's first point, it's a matter of gifting sometimes too, in the sense of there's not a lot of people, in my opinion, who can talk to unbelievers and believers at the same time, as far as like that's their target audience, to do both at the same time. And you brought up Tim Keller and Andy Stanley, who I think are both gifted in those areas. I find that most pastors, myself included, just have to be themselves, and just being themselves, they have certain giftings. Some pastors are more discipleship oriented. Some pastors are more evangelism oriented in their sermons. I think it's a matter of gifting a little bit. So I think individuals, to your question, and churches have their own fingerprint, and they just have to follow who they are, kind of thing. So.
Now, I've had a lot of thoughts about, that kind of question, like, who is the church really for? And that's essentially what you're getting at. I'm presuming, is the church for Christians, or is it for seekers? And I don't know that I have good answers. But when I think about it, and when I look at what Scripture has to say, it does seem to indicate that the primary role of the church is to equip the saints. And I think, I think I agree with Brent. It does depend on the church and how they structure themselves, and that equipping might happen from the pulpit on a Sunday morning, or that equipping might happen from small groups during the course of the week.
Yeah.
But neither circumstance, whether it's equipping from the pulpit or the pulpit is going to be a little bit softer and more invitational, neither circumstance does away with the fact that our responsibility as the church is to go out of the church with the gospel. So one way or another, whether your church is a seeker-oriented church or it's an equipping-oriented church from the pulpit, the church is supposed to leave those doors, leave those walls, and share the gospel individually with their friends and their family and their neighbors. And that's sometimes the hardest part, but that's the goal.
Yeah, I would agree. And I do think a lot of that equipping has to happen in addition to Sunday morning.
Yeah.
To your point, I think a lot of that it just can't happen only from the pulpit. It has to be within context of closer relationships, small group discipling kind of relationships. Which kind of brings me to my final point about this article. And I mean, again, it's kind of it's a big discussion point, probably one that we can talk about multiple times. But something that's really been on my mind, and this article really kind of drew it out, which was how much of the church is available online. How much are we able to do purely online, and are we able to do all of it online? the thing that I'll tell you guys a little bit about what I'm thinking. People who have said to me, I've really appreciated the online stuff that our church has been doing, you know, small group stuff and everything, but I've missed this element, and then they fill in. And to me, that's really, really fulfilling, because if we were able to make the transition seamless to where people said, man, like everything's going really well, you know, like everything's kind of, the gaps have all been filled in, then it would kind of break my heart about the community aspect of our church, about the kind of the things about our church that cannot be offered online.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody had said it's all there, you know, like everything that I wanted is still there, everything that Daybreak was is still there online, that would have made me a little bit desperate, honestly, thinking we're not doing what I had hoped we were doing. It made me think about how much of church is content driven, and how much of it is something else.
Mm-hmm.
Content, I mean, you know, people oftentimes say, well, what the church has to offer is a preaching, is some worship, like a community worship, corporate worship. That's content.
Mm-hmm.
That's the church's, but oftentimes people say the church's product. But that's not what church is, right?
Right.
I think one of the things that really has been thrown into very, very stark relief over this current crisis is that church cannot be reduced down to just preaching and worship. If it could be, then it could be offered online.
Right.
Are you following with me, Brent?
Yeah.
So what this article just kind of made me think of is, it's not just the language that you use, but it must be the community that you foster. It must be like the relationships, the way that people relate to one another that you foster, that has to speak pagan. That has to be, kind of to your point, Sean, reaching beyond the strictures of just the faith community, and reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
Church can't be content driven. And I think that's a really, really important point as we consider what church is all about. It's not just about coming and getting good, true preaching, true messages. That's important. But that's not all what church is about. It's not the only thing that church has to offer.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I find people who sort of float from church to church, many times it's just because they view church as a content-driven kind of thing, and then until they find the content not something they're liking anymore. But church is just, it's more than a good sermon and, you know, good worship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I find people that think of church that way. My personal experience is I find those the folks that sort of float from church to church and don't have some deeper relationships. And you know, I think there's something even to being around people that you disagree with a little bit. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? I just think there's something to that, actually. I mean, otherwise I don't know if that makes sense, but I agree. It's not all about content. You know?
Yeah, and I think just sorry to kind of circle that around to kind of bring this back to the article, where I think it's really important that we are able to speak a language that is accessible to people who have not lived their lives in faith communities, right? And I think that's kind of was his main point. You need to be accessible to people who are, but your community also needs to be, it's not just the message, it's not just the content, it needs to be the way that you relate to people is accessible to folks who are not part of a faith community.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe even more than making messages pagan friendly, making your community pagan friendly is probably as important, if not more important, to becoming what he would say is like a seeker friendly church. And what's fascinating is that's really hard to do online.
Yeah.
You know, So it's an interesting, churches face an interesting, as we have more and more, as to what you were saying, more and more visitors, more and more people tuning in. How are we making the community welcoming? That's a challenge for churches, I think, beyond just the content.
Yeah, I agree. This is
All
a
right.
good, thought-provoking article, I think.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Again, we'll post the link to that article in the description of the video and the podcast. And if you have additional thoughts, maybe some element of church that you find particularly valuable, that you appreciate about Daybreak or whatever church you happen to go to, the three of us would love to hear it. We're fascinated about church community and to hear how God uses the church community in people's lives. So if there's a comment you'd care to just kind of leave something about church community that you find so valuable or that you feel like is really important, we'd be fascinated to read about that. So yeah, I think we'll probably wrap up. I think we've probably gone long enough.
Can I add to that? I would say, and the other thing that I think would be fun is, and I know you guys have this same experience, people will email me or send me an article that they've read, and they're like, what are your thoughts about this? I'd love if someone has an article they're reading and they want to hear our thoughts on it, I think that'd be fun to see those as well.
Great point. Yeah, thank you. That's a good reminder. Several people have asked, can we give you discussion topics? I know some people probably want to hear some theology, but people probably more want to hear about our thoughts on fast food and cars and et cetera. So if you have anything you want us to discuss on the podcast, yeah, you can send it in info@daybreakvermont, all spelled out, .org. And maybe we'll feature your question or your article on the podcast, and we'd love to hear from you. And so thanks for listening. Episode number 2. Sean, any words of wisdom to leave us with before we go?
No, I'm all out of wisdom. Sorry.
Brent, why don't you sing the podcast jingle, and then we'll wrap it up.
So Sean made the jingle.
Thanks, guys. That was fun. That was fun.
All right, guys. Thank you. Yep. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you in a week.
Yeah.
Bye, guys. Bye.